So Rabbosai, let's review the answer of Rabbi Chanan, because we got a little bit distracted with the problems with the Zoom, the internet. On the one hand, Rabbi Chanan gives us an answer, but yet I'm not sure that we have all the problems solved. He's going to suggest a case where Reuven himself was Makadesh Leah and died. And Leah falls to Yibam together with a Sarah in front of Shimon. Reuven, when he married Sarah, it was Chutz Miploni, and that Ploni is a Nachri. The Nachri went ahead and married this woman, correct? So now she's an Ashes Ish to two different people, to Reuven and to the Nachri. When Reuven dies, then there isn't a feel of the Yibam. Why? Because Reuven, as a result of his marriage, which obviously predated the marriage of the Nachri, he generated vis-a-vis Shimon an erva to Leah. What do we call her? I forget. Of Ashes Ah. So there wasn't a feel of the Yibam. At the same time, the Nachri married this woman, and now there cannot be Yibam to a woman who is Ashes HaNachri, obviously. And that erev of Ashes Nachri should now create a p'tur on the tzara of Reuven, so that Reuven's two wives, one of whom is also married to a Nachri, will be excluded from Yibam. And Rabbi Chanan says that there will be no p'tur to the tzara of Reuven's wife, meaning the other wife of Reuven. There are two types of erva, and the distinction between the two of them is very relevant to the tzara, to the p'tur tzara. There's an erva that existed during the lifetime of the deceased, of that brother that will eventually die. And there's an erva that came into existence, emerged after the death of that brother. In this case, says Rabbi Chanan, the erva of Ashes each, which is generated by the marriage of Nachri to this woman, comes into existence only after the death of the brother of Reuven, because it would be impossible otherwise. Why? Because of Ein Iser Chalal Iser. It's impossible for the erva relationship or status of Ashes Ish, generated by the marriage of the Nachri, to emerge until after Reuven's death. And the reason for that is because the erva of Ashes Ish cannot be chal on top of the erva of Ashes Ish, basically. Meaning, if we look at it from the Nachri's perspective, he wants to create a new, brand new erva of Ashes Ish. He can't do so while Reuven is alive, because Reuven's life, his existence, already grabs the space and generates the erva of Ashes Ish. And therefore, the erva of Ashes Ish, which is generated by the Nachri, can only emerge after the death of Reuven, when we remove that status of Ashes Ish, that erva of Ashes Ish, and now we replace it with the erva Ashes Ish of Nachri. And the law is that there's no erva li'achar misas ha'ach, which could pater up with some. That's Rabbi Chanan. Yesh mishakasav levar b'tiritz etosal b'divrei apnei Yoshua. Now, we have a halacha that ain't kiddushin tofsin the Ashes Ish. So if you come over to a married woman, you say, I read these meetings. Why? The classic understanding before the Pnei Yoshua is because Ashes Ishes and Isur Kares, and Ein Kedushin Tovsim B'chayve Krisis. The Pnei Yoshua says, forget about that. There's a much more fundamental reason why Kedushin are not Tovsim and Ashes. And that is because Kedushin is a kinyan, and you cannot create a kinyan with a woman who's already knuya. Masha ein Kedushin Tovsim Ashes Ish, milvad Masha hi Michayave Krisis. The Ein Kedushin Tovsim B'chayve Krisis. Ein Kedushin Tovsim Ba, Mishum Shikvar Knuya Li'acher. Ulefi Zeh, Kol Yevamot, Shehi Ashes Ish Acher, Ein Tzarech Lefotra Miyibu Mishum Isur Erev HaShabbat, Lo Shayach Ba Nefila Liyibum Klal. In other words, what's the whole purpose of Yibum? The purpose of Yibum is to create a kinyan. That the Yavam now creates Ishus with the Yevamot, but that's impossible if she's an Ashes Ish. Now, if what prevents the Ishus from being Chal is because of Erev and Chayve Krisis, so on that the Torah says gave us the mitzvah of Yibum. But if the impossibility of Tfisas Kiddushin and having a kinyan on this Yevamot is because she is married to a Nachri in this case, and there's no nefila for Yibum at all. Why? Because there's no possibility of creating a kinyan. And the mitzvah of Yibum is given to create a kinyan. I don't know how to read that. Lehikanos lo, I think you read it. The Alkain, he ervich lo poteres saros. Based on this Pnei Yoshua, we have a new insight as to why there would be no P'tur Tzara here. There's no nefila for Yibum if we establish the following two premises. Premise number one, the purpose of Yibum is to create a kinyan, and premise number two, the Pnei Yoshua's premise, that if a woman is an Ashes Ish, the kinyan itself makes it impossible to create a second kinyan. So therefore, there's no nefila for Yibum, and hence there's no P'tur of Tzara. Now we get to the case of Ashes Shnei Mesa. Now, if a woman is married to two different men, like in the case of Chutz Miploni, then if the original Makadesh and the Ploni are brothers, when they die, if they don't have children, right? Then the wife, who's common to both of them, is called Ashes Shnei Mesa. So you have a situation of three brothers, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven and Shimon, two brothers, are married to the same woman. If they both die, then they're projecting that one single woman. Both brothers are projecting that one single woman into the arena of Yibum. That's called Ashes Shnei Mesa. And the Gemara establishes, let's just see what daf it's on. Oh, he doesn't tell you exactly what daf it's on right now. That makes echad mehem Yevama Yavoleh. And we learn from that Yevama nofels liyibu mimeis echad misyabeves. Aval Ashes Shnei Mesim eino misyabeves. His buyer begitin. Now he tells you, look, get Aflamed Aleph on the base. Oh, that's where Chav Zayin was. My mistake. Oh, so this whole sugya of Ashes Shnei Mesim is in Gittin, Lamed Zayin on the base. Lamed Aleph on the base. Okay. Titoche Metziyazu, we offer Shekitcha Ruben Chutz Mishimon Achiv, Yaka Kitcha Shimon, Umesu Shnei B'lo Banim. So two brothers were married to the same woman, not through Yibum, and now they both died. Why? That's called Ashes Shnei Mesa. And let's assume it's Xeris Akos. I mean, I would have said Kal V'chomer, this should be Yibum in this case. Because now there are two brothers then who died without children. But in any event, the Torah says, Umeis Echad Mehem, right? There are two brothers alive, one of them died, and there's Yibum. But here's a case where two brothers died. V'nofelaslo machmas shnei. Picture Ritosis one alone Nishnisa af Zubu Mishnasenu Bechlal Harayos. Thank you so much.
Actually, till Shmuz the Xeris, you need more.
I'll look at it later. I don't want to do that. That's probably good enough. Thank you so much. Oh. So Tosis asks, you have Ayin Zayin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Is Lovelo Nishnas Abzuk Mishnasei B'chlal Arayas Apochos Es Tzorseir Sharei Im Hoysel Lahem L'Rui V'Shimon Isha Cheres Gam Hin Ifteres Mishum Tzaras Eshes Shnei Mesim. And I would assume here that it means that we're activating the erva of Eshes Ach. But it's Eshes Ach without Yibum, because there's no Yibum in Eshes Shnei Mason. And now the tzara of any of these two brothers is a tzara's erev of Eshes Ach. So why shouldn't that be listed in our Mishnah? Oh, now again, we always need tzara and tzara's tzara, so he fears that always. He says, V'chein yitochen Ervazu shetiftar games tzaras tzarosa. Kigon shekidcha rumen chutz mishnei echav Shimon v'Levi. I guess it's going to be Yehuda around the bend, right? So now Ruben is mekadosh her chutz mi Shimon v'Levi. The kidcha af Shimon chutz mi Levi. Oh, so Shimon is mekadosh her chutz mi Levi. All right, so Levi was included in both chutzes, right? Because Reuven was chutz mi Levi, and Shimon was mekadosh chutz mi Levi. So Levi could marry this woman. Would that be Yibum? No, that wouldn't even be Yibum. 1 second. Mason Reuven and Shimon will above him, so they can't be Yibum over here because that's Eshes Shnei Mason. But Nafal Ufnei Levi v'Yehuda. Al Yehuda Yasur Mishamesh Shnei Mason. Aval Levi who muteres Lomi din Yibum Ela Mishum Shehi Nachris Ligabav. But what about Eshes Ach? Why isn't this called Eshes Ach? But since he said Chutz mi Levi. Yeah, I guess Chutz mi Levi removes the Eshes Ach. Reuven Shimon Kiddush also Chutz mi Menu. V'nasa Levi es Sarasa v'lo Isha Cheres mi Levado Beis Levi Labonim Osel Yehuda Ach Eshes. Okay, fine. That's how he works out Tzoras Tzor. V'tirtzu al pi ma sholchichu lahalon. All right, this is already a sugya in Gittin. Isur Eshes Shnei Mesim v'Yibum Eino Ela Zera D'Rabbanan Eino Minaton. In other words, I don't know what he's saying here. Is he saying that on a D'Rabbanan there's no tzara, there's no p'tur? I guess right. That's what he's saying. That if it's only D'Rabbanan, it can't patur up to tzara. Okay, wow. Now, but so the remaining view, you shall. Esiv Rabbi Chananya, Misnei Sheshes Reinoshim, Shepotsu Soseki Shitas Rabbi Eliezer. Because if you hold like Rabbi Eliezer that there's a balas t'nai, so then what do we have? Right, so we go back to Tosfos' original Kacha, and we have an erva of Eishes each, correct? The Tirei Shav Rebbe Mona. There's Kol Arayis HaTorah Osor Love. Eishes each. Hu HaOsra Al Hayav. What does that mean? Very ambiguous. So it means that there was no Maisa Kiddushin. So again, if I'm married to a woman, the Torah says I can't marry her sister. But in the case of Eishes Ish, it's not that the Torah is saying I can't marry this woman. It's his Kiddushin that generates the Isur. Hirshu Atostus, the Kavanas Yushalmi. Ushasa Mikikusha Rishon Shemen Relation Maxim Leversation Sisha Patersis Sarot Gofin Chikirsha Paila or Risha. So it's not the case of Kiddushin, it's a case of Gerish. So Girsha Baila Rishon Al Tnai Shaloti Nase Li Yavam. As far as the Yavam is concerned, she is still an Eishes Ish. And she will pater up the Tsar. So why isn't that listed in our Mishnah? Yushalmi answers, because all Kalarai the Torah, HaTorah Osra. Sish Baila Rishon Hu Osra Al Hayav. So Tosfos says, Eino Domela. Fisha Isura Tolui Biyad Hamagarish. Imrotza Yigarshenet Shuv Lelotnai. Kodem Shiyamus Baila Hasheni. Who's Baila Hasheni? So again, he was Megarisha Chutz mi Plog. And who is that Ploni? That's the Yavam. Now his brother marries her after he dies, and now she falls for Yibum. I'm assuming there are three brothers here in this case, right? We discussed this case before, did we not? No, not here. Yirish Adam is Isha, this is on top of Ayin Hey on the left hand. Al Menashelo Tinose LeRuvain, Aholcha Venises LeShimon Achiv, Mace Isla Lo Bun. Arehi Pturim in Ayibum. Shum she'im tisam lo yisbatel atnai v'yafkiu hagerish. So bir tirutzo kosav ervas Eishes ish Bas Ishes Ish. I had it and I lost it. So again, Girsha, Hamanash Lo Tinose Leruve. Also, this is Shimon, who makes Bon. She falls for Yibum to Ruvain, am I right? Or to Levi?
Husband.
Why Levi died?
No, Shimon died.
No, I meant to say Ruvain died.
No, Ruvain divorced.
Ruvain divorced. And now she marries Shimon. Shimon dies. And she falls for Yibum to who? To
Levi.
But what happened
was the one Ruvain's.
Right. Not sure why she doesn't fall for Yibum to Reuven. Okay, fine. So she falls for Yibum to Levi. And this is where Tosfos says that there was an Erevashis Ach. She was married to Reuven. Tirtzu, Erevas Ashes or Mishnah of the Mishnah. And what this should be a case of Baila Rishon Al Hatnai. Now his brother marries him, and she falls for him.
No, I mean.
What was he asking if we got the internet back? Now what happens here? So Levi is problematic here because Reuven made a t'nai that the Gerushin should not be chalbis be Levi. Is that the case? Now Ashes Ach. Let's go to an Ashes Ach. I know she's actually in an Ashes each, am I right? She's an Ashes. Maybe she's an Ashes each. So Aina Dome Lahem Lefisha Isura Tolu Yada Magarish. Im Yirtzi Garshel Shu Lo Tnai. Ogem Shi Yomus Ailo Hashem. I guess Baila Sheni means Shimon in this case. Yatirena Afli Othiv Hayovam. In Sharais Inkop Yachum Odom Latirali. And I get the vague idea. It may come back to that whole discussion we had about Dumya de Achos Ishto. That Achos Ishto is the paradigmic case of the Tur Tzara. And there's nothing you can do to remove that. But here, all Reuven has to do is give a second get without a shirur. In which case, there's no reason why Levi cannot be miyavim Ashes Reuven. That's not like another erva which opens up with Sarah, where there's no power to remove the erva. Okay, so let's make a note because where are we holding? We have a few more minutes. I just want to get back to the Gemara itself. That's okay. All right. So you have Ayin Zayin. What about Ayin Ches? Want to do that tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll have to.
See if we can do that. Or we could take up a collection and you could buy them as sifting. All right. Hint. Not such a hint. Okay. So we're now on Daf Yudom on Daf 1 second. Did we turn to Daf Yud yet? No, we're still on Daf Pesam Beis. Right. Okay, so we had this whole discussion about Bito. You could not have Shtei Achios and Bito in a case of Nisuin, but only in a case of Onis. And since it's Lo Mishkachasle, we're going to apply the principle of Nisuin Kamairi and Ba'onsim Lo Kamari. Then we had Abaye, and Abaye wanted to include Bito based on the fact that there's Anusasa. That's called Kevidash Kuche Mishkachasle. Iboy Mina Onsim Tehevi, right? In the case of, let's say, Bas, and Iboy Mina Nisuin Tehevi, I guess in the other cases of the Erev of Bas. Oh. Now we're up to Aval Eishis up Hayabalamo Lo. That's, I think, where we got up to. So in other words, the din of Shtei Achios could not apply to Eishis Achiv Shlo Hayabalamo. My timer. This is all going to be diagram Ayin Gimel, like the bottom left on what we call Tes Amud Beis Vav. He says, Kevan de l'Rabbi Shimon Yehuda Mishkachas Le, l'Rabbanan Lo Mishkachas Le, v'plukta Lo Kamayr. We want to know why Eishis Achiv Shlo Hayabol Lama was not included in the Mishnah later on in Daf Chaf of Muteres Lazem Vasur Lazen Shtei Achios. It's because it can only be possible al liba de Rabbi Shimon and not al liba de Rabbanan. And b'plukta Lo Kamayr. So on both sides, we have two choices. We can either read the Masechet or we can look at the diagram. They're both the same. So if somebody would volunteer to look at the diagram, I'm going to read the Masechet. Eina Mishnah Oseket Megrim Ashnuyim Machlokes. V'lo Yitzuyar Din Ze El Rabbi Shimon Hu HaOmer Shlo Nesra Eishes Ach Shlo Hoyev Ba'olama Ela Imkain Nolad Ach Ze Kodem Sheyivma Ha'ach Shlo Hoyev Ba'olama. So right. So Levi was born after the death of Reuven, and what he was looking at is a situation in which Shimon was already miyabem Eishes Reuven. Im yimma ha'achat sheni v'rak achar kach nolad Shimon, the achar kach meis ha'sheni below bonim harei hi misyabemes. According to Rabbi Shimon, Levi would be chayav and yibum in this case. Why? Because he was ba'olamo of Shimon, and regardless of the fact that he was not ba'olamo of Reuven, Shimon's ishus replaces the ishus to Reuven. Ulishitaso, itachein din achios af beishus ach shlohoy ba'olam kigon. Okay, now we're ready for the diagram. I'm going to read it in the Masechet. I hope you have the diagram. No, we don't. You don't have Ayin Gimel. All right. So anyway, you'll be able to. It's not in any of these pages here. Ayin Gimel. I guess not. All right. Here's the case. Reuven v'Shimon v'Levi Yehuda Achiv. Rachel v'Leah Achios. Nasa Reuven es Rachel v'Shimon es Leah. So we have two brothers, that's Reuven and Shimon, married to two sisters, that's Rachel and Leah. So far, so good? Umeis Reuven below Banin. Okay. So now Reuven, we said, was married to Rachel. Nafla Rachel lifnei Echav liyibu. So Rachel falls for Yibum, which I assume means she falls for Yibum to Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Right, we said there were four brothers. The Achakach nolad lehem ach Yisachar. Umotza es Rachel, Eshes Ruvain, Asura olav mishum Eshes achiv shalahoy b'olam. The Achakach Yibem Levi es Rachel, Eshes Ruvain, Meiskam Shimon below Banim, V'naflo Leah lifnei Echav liibo. The Achkach nolad lehem ach Zvulun, Umotza es Levi Eshes Shimon, Asura olav mishum Eshes ish shalohoy b'olam. So if I have this correct, both Yisachar and Zvulun are faced with a situation of Eshes ach shalohoy b'olam, whether it would be Rachel, the wife of Ruvain, or whether it be Leah, the wife of Shimon. Yachach Yibem Yehuda es Leah, Eshes Shimon, Mesu gam Levi v'Yehuda below Banim. And again, Levi was Miyabim Bracha. And now, again, and Yehuda was Miyabim Leah. Okay, then? So that's what we have. Well, Reuben and Shimon, who were married respectively to Rachel, Leah, died. And the other two brothers, Shahayu Ba'olamam, which is Levi and Yehuda, they were Miyabim, respectively, Rachel and Leah. Mesu Gam Levi Yehuda B'Libanim. Okay, so now we're talking about Rachel and Leah falling for Yibum, for Zvulun and Yisachar, as a result in the second round of the death of Levi and Yehuda. Array, L'shitas Rabbi Shimon, Rachel, Asura L'Yisachar, Mishum Shi Haisa Eshes Rishlohoy B'Olam L'Yisachar, but she's Muteres L'Zvulun, Shenolad Achrei Shenisyam Levi. The Einachos Kukasa. Beautiful. You have it because this story is a developing story. It turns out that Zvulun was Ba'olamo Shal Yisachar. Yisachar was not Ba'olamo, but nevertheless, by the time Yisachar came into the picture, Levi had already been the Yabem Brach. Well, maybe I got the names a little bit confused. Did I get the names right? So therefore, there'll be Muteres L'Zeh Asur L'Zeh. And this is all based on the Shita Rabbi Shimon, where there's no Erev of Eshes Achim Shlohay B'Olamo. If the Yibum took place, like in the classic case, Shimon was Miyabim Eshes Reuben before Levi was born. So when Levi is born, he's already looking at a situation where the Yibum of Shimon replaces the Ishus to Reuben, and therefore there is Yibum. And Rabbi Shimon rejects in this case the application of Eshes Achim Shlohay B'Olam. And if that be the case, then we just get to the next generation of Zvulun and Yisachar. You could have a situation in which Zvulun came into the world looking at a pre-existing Yibum, and therefore you could have Muteres L'Zeh Asur L'Zeh. Now, all this is based on the principle of the Plugta Kamayri, meaning that the Mishnah would in fact add Eshes Achim Shlohay B'Olam, but that can only work according to Shimon, according to Rabbi Shimon, I mean to say. Okay. Then. Now, the next Gemara, which we'll look at tomorrow, is going to present another interpretation of Rav and Rav Chia. That's Rav Safra. But we had Abaye, now we have Rav Safra. And according to this shita, the case of Eishes Ochim Shalahai Balomo would in fact be added to the Mishnah Daf Chaf. And I guess that's going to be against Rebbe, who says that B'Pluta Lo Kamayri, because we're going to always introduce Rav Shimon in order to structure a case of Eishes Ochim Shalahai Balomo with Teres L'Seh Basur L'Seh. So tomorrow, B'Lineta, we'll start with Rav Safra. We'll turn to Daf Yud. That's what we have here.